On the training field, the small woman collapsed before crawling halfway through the obstacle course. Laughter erupted. She'll never make it through basic training. The next day, when the unit went on a real mission, an unexpected ambush exploded around them. Live rounds tore through the air. The recruits who had mocked her fell into chaos. No one knew what to do. Through the gunfire, the SEAL commander shouted, "Shadow 7, execute!" She sprang up, eyes cold as steel, grabbing her rifle. In seconds, the battlefield changed. The entire squad fell silent. The person they had looked down on had just saved all their lives. Elena Cruz was 27 years old, small in stature, with long brown hair and eyes that always seemed drowsy, as if she never got enough sleep. She had joined basic training to become a regular soldier, starting from the bottom like everyone else. But every single exercise was a disaster for her. The 5-kilometer run. She always fell behind, gasping for breath while others finished strong. Crawling under barbed wire. She would collapse halfway through and have to be pulled out by instructors. Carrying a 30-kilogram pack, she would stumble and fall, unable to lift the weight that others managed easily. The young recruits mocked her relentlessly. "She's completely useless. Just looking at her, you know she's going to wash out. Why did they even let someone like her in here?" A staff sergeant would shout at her daily, "Go home. This isn't a place for weaklings." Elena endured it all silently. She never argued back, never defended herself, never showed any anger or frustration. At night, while the other recruits slept, she would quietly do push-ups in the darkness. She would disassemble and reassemble weapons by touch alone, her movements precise and mechanical. The night guard later recalled, "I saw her at the shooting range at 3 in the morning, practicing with wooden targets. She repeated the same motions over and over, like someone who had lived their entire life with a rifle in their hands." During the day, she seemed clumsy and incompetent. But in the darkness, when no one was watching, her true nature emerged. Her movements became fluid, professional, deadly. She knew exactly how to field strip every weapon in the armory. She could calculate wind speed and distance by instinct. She understood tactics and battlefield awareness at a level that exceeded most of the instructors. But she kept all of this hidden, maintaining the facade of someone who didn't belong in the military. The other recruits continued their harassment. They would trip her during meals. They would accidentally knock her equipment into the mud. They would place bets on how many days it would take before she quit. Elena absorbed every insult, every cruel joke, every gesture of contempt. She let them believe she was exactly what she appeared to be, a weak woman who had somehow slipped through the recruitment process. What they didn't know was that she was deliberately failing. She was purposely holding back abilities that would have made their best soldiers look amateur. Because the last time she had used those abilities at full capacity, someone she cared about had died. So she stumbled through basic training, accepting their scorn, carrying the weight of a secret that was heavier than any backpack they could make her shoulder. Until the day when pretending was no longer an option. It started as a routine morning exercise. The unit was deployed for an extended field training mission in the mountain forests. Everyone assumed it would be just another drill, similar to the practice exercises they had been running for weeks. Elena struggled along with the group, as usual. She fell behind during the march. She needed help with her equipment. She appeared to be the same liability she had always been. When the unit stopped for a rest break, everyone was relaxed, talking casually, treating the exercise like an extended camping trip. Then real explosions erupted from the hillside above them. Live ammunition screamed overhead, kicking up dirt and rock. The unit was caught in an actual ambush during what they thought was a training exercise. The young recruits panicked instantly. Some dropped their weapons, others dove for cover without thinking. A few froze completely, unable to process what was happening. Elena sat down heavily, clutching her backpack, her eyes wide with apparent fear. She looked just as helpless and terrified as the rest of the newer soldiers. That's when SEAL Commander Ross Hale appeared through the chaos, his voice cutting through the gunfire. "Shadow 7, on your feet. Execute." Elena's entire body went rigid. The call sign she had buried for 4 years was being shouted in the middle of a real firefight. Her eyes changed. The drowsy, confused expression vanished completely. In its place was something sharp, focused, and absolutely lethal. She stood up in one fluid motion, snatching her M4 rifle from the ground. Her body language transformed completely, from clumsy recruit to elite operator in the span of a heartbeat. What happened next defied everything the other soldiers thought they knew about warfare. Elena identified the enemy positions by sound alone, her head tilting slightly as she processed the acoustic signatures of different weapons. She eliminated the first sniper with a single, precisely aimed shot from a position that should have been impossible to accurately engage. She dropped the second attacker with another perfect shot, while simultaneously shouting clear, professional instructions to the panicking recruits. "Jones, left flank, 30 meters. Williams, suppressing fire on the ridge. Mitchell, get those rookies to cover." She moved across the battlefield like water flowing around obstacles. Every step was calculated. Every shot was precise. Every command she gave made the chaotic situation more controlled. The ambush that should have lasted 20 minutes was broken in under 60 seconds. The recruits who had mocked her for months stared in absolute shock. This was not the same person who had struggled to complete basic exercises. This was someone operating at a level they had never seen before. One of the young soldiers whispered to his companion, "I thought she didn't even know how to shoot properly. But every single round she fired was faster and more accurate than our best instructors." Elena secured the area with professional efficiency, checking for additional threats, ensuring the wounded were treated, coordinating with command for extraction. When the immediate danger was over, she quietly returned to her position with the group. But the mask was gone now. Everyone could see that they had been completely wrong about who she really was. Commander Ross approached her as the dust settled. "Shadow 7, how long did you think you could keep hiding?" Elena looked at him with eyes that carried years of pain. "I wasn't hiding, sir. I was trying to forget." But forgetting, as they had all just learned, was no longer an option. After the ambush ended, word spread through the unit like electricity. Elena is actually Shadow 7? The recruits struggled to process what they had witnessed. Some tried to rationalize it away. Others simply stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible. She can barely get through basic training exercises." "But we all saw what just happened." "That wasn't the same person who was collapsing on the obstacle course yesterday." Commander Ross called Elena aside for a private conversation away from the group. "How long were you planning to keep hiding who you are?" Ross asked directly. Elena's voice carried the weight of old guilt. "I swore I would never go back. Because one moment of hesitation, my teammate died because of me." The full story emerged piece by piece. 4 years earlier, Elena had been one of the military's most elite rapid response specialists. Call sign Shadow 7. She was legendary among special operations units for reflexes that seemed almost superhuman. Her tactical awareness was so advanced that she could predict enemy movements before they happened. Her marksmanship was so precise that she could eliminate threats in conditions where other snipers couldn't even acquire targets. She had completed dozens of impossible missions, hostage rescues, high-value target eliminations, counter-terrorism operations that required split-second timing and absolute precision. But during one critical mission, she had hesitated for half a second. Just half a second of human doubt, in a moment that demanded mechanical perfection. Her hesitation cost the life of someone she cared about. "I watched him die," Elena continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I knew that if I had acted a fraction of a second faster, he would still be alive. So I left. I came back to basic training as a regular recruit, hoping I could convince myself that person was gone." Ross studied her carefully. "But you can't escape what you are. Today, if you hadn't been here, we would have had real casualties. Those kids are alive because Shadow 7 still exists." The transformation in how the other recruits treated Elena was immediate and dramatic. The young soldier who had mocked her most cruelly approached with his head down. "Ma'am, I made fun of you when I saw you struggling in training. I feel like an idiot now." Elena shook her head. "You weren't wrong to see me as incompetent. I was trying to be incompetent. But why? Why would someone with your abilities pretend to be bad at this?" "Because," Elena said quietly, "I was afraid of being good at it again. I was afraid of the responsibility that comes with these skills." Other soldiers began to share what they had observed. "I never understood why you would practice at night when you were failing during the day. Now I realize you weren't practicing. You were trying to remember how to forget." A military medic who had witnessed the ambush spoke up. "I watched you treat wounded soldiers while maintaining defensive positions and coordinating fire support. That's not something you learn in basic training. That's years of advanced combat experience." The unit's communication specialist added, "Your tactical coordination during the firefight was textbook special operations. You were running that entire engagement like you'd done it 1,000 times before." Elena listened to their observations, realizing that her cover had been more transparent than she thought. "I guess I wasn't as good at hiding as I believed." Commander Ross addressed the group. "Shadow 7 chose to start over, because she carries the weight of command decisions that most of you will never have to make. Today, she saved lives. 4 years ago, she lost someone she cared about. Both of those things are part of who she is." The young recruits began to understand that they hadn't just been training alongside someone who was pretending to be incompetent. They had been in the presence of someone carrying wounds that couldn't be seen. Elena realized that running away from her abilities hadn't made the pain go away. It had just delayed the moment when she would have to decide whether to use those abilities again. Today, that moment had arrived, and she had made her choice. The question now was, what would she choose going forward? The next day in the mess hall, Elena sat with her usual cold soup, trying to pretend that nothing had changed. The soldier who had laughed at her most cruelly approached her table. He set down his meal tray across from her. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. If it weren't for you yesterday, we'd be dead." Elena looked up. "You don't owe me anything. You saw exactly what I wanted you to see. But why would you want us to think you were failing?" "Because failing felt safer than succeeding. Success in my line of work usually means someone else doesn't go home." Other soldiers no longer mocked or ignored her. Instead, they nodded respectfully when she passed. They made space for her in conversations. They treated her with the deference usually reserved for decorated veterans. Commander Ross Hale stood up in the center of the mess hall, his voice carrying clearly, "I want everyone to remember something from yesterday. The person we thought was our weakest link turned out to be the reason we all made it home alive. Never forget that lesson." There was no applause, no dramatic speeches, but the atmosphere in the room had fundamentally changed. From that day forward, the chair next to Elena in the mess hall remained empty, not because people were avoiding her, but as a silent acknowledgement that they owed her their lives. A young recruit approached her after dinner. "Ma'am, would you be willing to teach us some of what you know?" Elena paused, considering, "I'm not sure I'm the right person to teach anyone how to take lives." "With respect, ma'am, you didn't teach us how to take lives yesterday. You taught us how to save them." That evening, Elena found herself at the shooting range with a small group of the soldiers she had once trained alongside as equals. But now they watched her demonstrations with the attention of students learning from a master. She realized that her skills didn't have to be a burden. They could be a gift she gave to others, not the gift of violence, but the gift of competence that could keep people alive when everything went wrong. For the first time in 4 years, Elena began to think that maybe Shadow 7 didn't have to be someone she was ashamed of. Maybe Shadow 7 could be someone who helped others come home safe. People are quick to label others as weak, failed, or unfit for combat. But sometimes, that's a mask worn by someone trying to bury the pain of being too good at war. Elena Cruz couldn't pass basic training not because she lacked ability, but because she feared the power she had once wielded. When real combat erupted and the command Shadow 7 execute rang out, she became the person who saved everyone. The lesson is profound. Never look down on someone just because you see them stumble in training. The person you laugh at today might be the one who pulls you back from death tomorrow. Behind every apparent failure might be someone carrying wounds from being too successful at things that matter most. If you've ever seen someone quiet do something extraordinary, leave a dot in the comments. And if you believe these stories of hidden strength deserve to be told, subscribe to SN Quiet Stories.